Book Devotion from Patti Smith. Devotion, Part 1. He first noticed her on the street. She was small, with porcelain skin and thick dark hair with severely cut fringe. Her cloak seemed thin for winter, and the hem of her uniform uneven. As she brushed past, he felt the sting of intellect. A petite Simone Weil, he remembered thinking. He saw her again a few days later, heading away from the other students, rushing to make their class. He stopped and turned, speculating on what drove her in the opposite direction. Perhaps she felt ill and broke form to return home, but her determined air suggested otherwise. Most likely a forbidden rendezvous, an eager young man. She boarded a trolley. He didn't know why he followed her. Absorbed in her own trajectory, she failed to notice him. When she reached her destination, he stayed several paces behind as she approached the burning forest. Unwittingly, she led him down a stone path to a thick grove obscuring a large pond, perfectly round and completely frozen. Between incisions of light cutting through the dense pine, he observed as she brushed the snow from a low, flat boulder that sat gazing towards the glistening pond. Clouds moved overhead, masking then exposing the sun, and momentarily the scene silverly solarized. She suddenly turned in his direction, but did not see him. She moved a pair of battered ice skates from her satchel, stuffed crushed paper in the tools, and dutifully wiped their blades. The surface of the pond was patchy, her skates ill-fitting. Adjusting to these hindrances may have contributed to her perilous style. After circling several times, she picked up speed and from a seemingly teetering position effortlessly cast herself into the liquid space. Her jumps was astonishing elevation. Her landing were offset yet precise. He watched as she executed a combination spin, bending and twirling like a mad top. Never had he seen athleticism and artistry so poignantly meshed. There was a wet chill in the air. The sky deepened, casting a blue light on the pond. She opened her eyes wide, catching the blur of pines in the distance. She bruised the sky. She skated for those trees, that sky. He should have turned away, but knew himself, recognizing the interior shudder when face to face with a delicacy as a vessel wrapped in centuries of hags that the would unwind surely possess, and raised to his lips. He left before the snow fell, catching sight of her raised arm as the spoon had bowed. The wind picked up, and reluctantly she left the pond. Untying her laces, she reflected with satisfaction on the day's events. She had risen early, said prayers in the student chapel, and having already completed her national exams, retrieved her satchel from her locker and left without hesitation or remorse. Though a star pupil, precocious in her studies, she was completely indifferent. She had mastered Latin at 12, easily solved complex equations, and was more than capable of breaking down and re-examining the most ambiguous concepts. Her mind was a muscle of discontent. She had no intention of completing her studies, not now or ever. She was almost 16, finished with it all. Her sole desire was to astonish. All else faded in the stepped upon the ice, feeling its surface through the blades into her calves. A misted morning that would soon clear, making it perfect for skating. She made coffee and warmed some bread in a pan and called out to her Aunt Irina, forgetting that she was now on her own. On the way to the pound, she noticed that despite the cold, there were berries in the brambles, but she did not pick them. Wisps of fog seemed to rise from the ground. The light was silvery, and the pound took on a burnished quality in its finished by munificent hands. She made the sign of a cross and stepped upon the ice, reveling in her solitude, but she was not alone. An intemperate curiosity and the certainty that she would find her drove him to return. Undetected, he watched, and she was executed unique and intricate combinations, dangerously and poetically sporadic. Her rapture excited him. God had given breath to a work of art. She arched her body, spinning in descending spiral, shaking a bit of glittering dust from the star she was undeniably becoming and he soon departed, but not soon enough. She could not be sure of the exact moment she became conscious of his presence. At first it was no more than a feeling. Then, still in the morning, she distinguished his form, the colors of his coat and scarf, not entirely camouflaged. Sensing no ill will, she continued to skate, energized by his presence. No one, not even her aunt, had seen her skate since she was 11. As the days passed guardedly connected, they assumed their holes, each bolstered by the other. Having freed herself from the enforced structure of school, and Irina was gone, her days flowered into one another. She had a little sense of time, and lived by the approach of diminishing of light. She slept longer than usual, and dawn was already breaking. Hurriedly she moved through morning rituals, grabbed by skates, and headed towards the grove. As she approached the pond, she spied the edge of a large and white box set in the exposed roots of an old sycamore. She knew it must be for her from him. Dropping her skates, she removed a few heavy stones that had been placed on the lid and opened it slowly. Within layers of pale tissue of the mauve-colored coat, a costly though somewhat old-fashioned garments, ingeniously cut and lined with silky fur. It suited her perfectly, as the priceless style skirt was detachable. So to practice freely, with trembling hands, she examined every detail, marveling at the elaborate stitching, weightless fur lining, and its strange color that seemed to change with the changing light. She slipped it on, surprised that despite the impression of lightness, it provided the warmth of a miracle. She shyly searched his usual sight to register her pleasure, but there was no sign of him. Twirling about giddily, She experienced the melancholy luxury of solitary joy. The unexpected gift suggested small hopes, a vague but promising human connection. She felt a delight but also a fear of it, for it momentarily seemed to eclipse her impatience to skate. She lived only for skating. She told herself there was no room for anything else. Not love. School was scraping the walls of memory, negotiating a bouquet of confusion. The lace on her skate broke in her hand. She quickly knotted it and then unfastened the skirt of her new coat and stepped onto the ice. I am Eugenia, she said. No, to no one in particular.